Yeah.
Okay, so the third parak of Sefer Yeshua,
Yeah.
pasuk Beis. Welcome to Yeshua, fellas. Here we are. Vayhi beketze shloishes yamim, and it was at the end of a duration of 3 days. V'aviru hashoitrim bekerev
Yeah.
bekerev. Going down to the rest of the pasuk. Hold on. Bekerev hamachana. So this is actually referring to that the shoitrim, which means the people who were appointed, so they went from within the camp,
Where is the
from within
pasuk?
the camp. Now the third pasuk says, "V'yitzavu es ha'am lemor." They commanded everyone, saying, "Kiroischem eis Aron bris Hashem." When you see the Aron, the ark, the covenant of Hashem, Elokeichem, your God, v'hakohanim halavim, noisim oisim, osa. Now make up your mind: is it Kohanim or Levim who are carrying it? The Kohanim halavim. The Kohanim. It doesn't say vehalavim and the Levim were carrying it. Okay, they were carrying it. Vatem and you. Tisu mimikoimchem v'halachtem achorav. You shall travel from your place, and you shall walk after it. Acharochoik yiyeh beinechem ubeinov kalpayim ama b'midah. But you should be a distance between beinechem ubeinov kalpayim ama b'midah. Approximately 2,000 amos. You should distance yourself from the Aron, like it says. Don't stand behind this fire truck for X amount of space. So to over here, X amount of feet. Al tikru love, do not come close to it. Lamana asher teidu, in order that you shall know. Esaderech asher telchu bo, the way that you shall go. Kilo avartem baderech mitmol shul, because you never went this way in previous days. Those are the three pesukim. Comes along the mitzvos. Comes along the mitzvos. The mitzvos, David is one of the first places you gotta look when it comes to understanding pesukim. The simple explanation. So the mitzvos over here writes, Aron bris ha'oron shabo haluchu shekoros Hashem brisim Yisrael beis asher not. This is the Aron that has the two luchos tablets. V'atem ve'azatem tiso. Then you will travel. That's what the Mitsuda says. Now, Beinov, he says Bein Aron, between the Aron and the people. That's the Mitsudas. Comes along Rashi over here and says, Rashi in Gimel v'halachtem achorov. By the way, Rashi in the previous one points out because they all came from Levi, that's why they're called Hakohanim Alavim. Okay, there's other explanations in that. And in another place it says that there are 48, the Bereshit Rabbah says that in 48 places the Kohanim are actually called Leviim, which is interesting. Then Rashi says, V'alachtem achorov, nishtana hamasa hazem mishar masaos. This traveling is different than other travelings. Shekol zman shemoisha hayakayim haya omud ha'ona noisi techila. In all other places, when Moshe was around, the Amud Ha'on, the clouds of glory, would travel first. Umar lehem haderech, and it would instruct them and show them the right way. Va'aron noisei acher beis the golem, and the Aron would follow Achshav Aron noisei techila. In other words, the Gemara in Sota on Lamed Beis, quoted by Rashi over here, is teaching us that it used to be that the Aron was among the Jews, but now the Aron is going to come before them. Let's actually see a few more Rashis, and then we'll start adding some very important chedushim and important ideas. Davar acher beis aranos hayu shel shchina v'shel yos mehalchin yachav. Another explanation that Rashi quotes is that there were two arcs that were going: the one with the Torah and the one that had the coffin of Yosef. Why 2,000 amos? That they were able to go and daven in front of it on Shabbos. That's just as in Tanchum Lefisha Yedish
Right.
Asidim
So
Stardom Lefnei Yericho B'Shabbos, because they knew
Hamilton's.
that
Right.
they
And
would
then I
beat
saw
the
that. So Hamilton.
Yerushalayim on Shabbos itself. Lamana Sher Teidun Musav Halachtem Achorov. All right, fine. So that's Rashi over there. Now that was all the technical stuff, just to get some of the main ideas and the main commentators on the pesukim over here. Let's go into something a little bit deeper over here. The
What's the whole
Archel.
thing with top? What's
What?
the whole thing with top? I'm not understanding this whole thing with the. I understand Alpine Mamba is the tchum,
Yeah.
but what's the connection to Shabbos over here?
Because it's if they would go out of that, they weren't allowed to walk more than that. So if they stay within that, then it would make it that they were able to walk within that area even without an Eruv. Now, there's a sefer called Nachlas Shimshon. It's actually very interesting. If you look in the room where we learn every single day, they actually have it there. It's a beautiful set written by someone from Yeshiva who actually lives on Yeshiva Lane in Baltimore. And he has a very lumdish piece on he has around 10 pages on this Indian of Tchum. I don't look into it because I'm not into lumdish so much, but just to know it's out there is very interesting. Now, there's a very interesting Likutei Sichos that actually the Art Scroll quotes over here. It says like this, that in the Midbar, when they were in the desert, the life of the people was completely spiritual as well as their food. We know they ate the man. Their water, it all came directly from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It came from Hashem. It was miracles wherever they went. But now they're going into Eretz Yisrael for the first time, the land of Israel. They're entering into a physical existence. They're going to be challenged to elevate their mundane activities to a spiritual level. They're no longer going to be having free lunch, so to say. This is symbolized by the ark, the Aron. It was made of wood, plated with gold, but it still contained the handiwork of Hashem. By commanding the people to follow the Aron, Yehoshua meant to convey this lesson to them. Or another idea is you want to keep the Torah first. Interesting idea, right? That's actually what they say in the beginning to the introduction to these pesukim. That this is teaching us a very important perspective that the Torah has to be the centerpiece of our lives. And it was carried by the Kohanim, symbolizing that they were leading the way, conveying that lesson as well. So that's basically what they say over here. Now, just to get a calculation, one amma is approximately 2 feet. So that would mean that the 2,000 amos, if you do the math, would be around 1 mile, 5,280 feet. Either an amma is a foot and a half or 2 feet. So you just multiply it. If you convert it into feet, 2,000 amos would be actually more like 4,000 feet, but it would be close to a mile. All right, so that's the distance. Now here's where things get very interesting. That was all the boring stuff, so to say. But here's where things get very interesting and halachic. This is really the first time in Sefer Yehoshua where we're really gonna derive a halacha from a pasuk. Pay attention and listen closely. There's a beautiful sefer which we've quoted from on the past on Sefer Yehoshua called the Kli Yakar. It has nothing to do with the Kli Yakar ala Torah. The Kli Yakar has a insightful comment on this pasuk in just a few words, and it's amazing how something so practical could come from just a few words. The Kli Yakar writes on this pasuk, "The Efshar Shemikan." It's possible that from here, Yismachu lakum mipnei sefer Torah v'lalechach achorov. It could be that this is the source that when you see a sefer Torah, you not only have to stand up for it, but this is where it comes from the custom, the minhag olam, to escort the sefer Torah. V'asmachu achra ta'achrei Hashem, and it's based on this pasuk. In other words, let's go back to the pasuk. Pay attention now this time, because this is one of the things that could easily slip a person's mind. Let's go back to the pasuk over here. Pasuk says what? Vayhi. Oh no, wrong pasuk. I'm gonna go to pasuk gimel actually. Pasuk gimel. Vayitzavu asoim leimor kira oischem eis Aron brisa Hashem Elokeichem v'akohanim v'aliyim noisim oisim v'atem tisou mimikoimchem v'halachtem achorov. It says in the pasuk, you see the Aron, you follow it. Travel from your place and go after the Aron. Oh, comes along the Kli Yakar and says, what do you see from here? You see a sefer Torah on the go. You better move. You better follow it. Good? Everyone agrees to the point. Anyone there? Anyone here or no?
Yes, I'm here. I'm just on mute.
Okay, but you agreed to the point.
Agree to the point. How am I? Whether I agree or disagree? What's the big difference? It's a tremendous chap by the Kli Yakar.
Yeah, big chiddush, and that's why he says it's possible. David, you agree? Good. There's a beautiful sefer on Sefer Yehoshua called the Lulmodu Lalamid. And over there, Rabbi Mordechai Katz, he says, we find another instance when a sefer Torah is taken from the Aron Kodesh, and when it's returned to its place, it's a mitzvah to accompany the Torah, to escort it, to follow it. And we'll come back to the halachos. But first, let's quote this amazing story that he says. The first thing that the Nazis, Yamach Shamam V'Zichram, did when they entered a Jewish community in Europe was they set the local shul, the synagogue, they burnt the thing. They burnt the shul. The purpose of this act was to terrorize and demoralize the Jews. It was done openly and in broad daylight. And on occasion, they would gather all of the local Jews and force them to watch this terrible destruction. More than once, one of the oppressed and persecuted Jews would defy the rules and death, and he would rush forth into the shul to rescue the sefer Torah. They were getting burnt. One of the communities in Poland, the base medrash shul was engulfed in flames. And the German soldiers, they forced the Jews to watch. Many of the Jews were gathered, and their heads, they were bowed, and they were in pain and humiliation. The rabbi of the community was ordered to sit in the front row.
Thank you, Paulo. Thank you.
Suddenly, the rabbi, he broke away and he began to run. And a couple Jews followed him. The Germans, they told him to halt, but the rabbi didn't listen. Nothing could stop the rabbi, not even the flames. The rabbi and the two Jews, they disappeared inside the burning shul. The Germans were speechless with astonishment, and a few moments later, they reappeared. Their clothing was singed, but their face was shining, and in their hands they held the Torah. They pointed their rifles at the burning shul. Said the two men that assisted the rabbi wouldn't be able to come out. And they attacked the rabbi with the end of their rifles. But he held on to the Torah as if it was him and the Torah were inseparable. And they were. Quoted in the sefer Menucha V'Simcha on page 159. It says in the Mishnah and Avos in the fourth parak, someone who honors the Torah receive honor. And the opposite is true as well. And the Gemara says in Megillah on Chav Zayin, whoever sells a Torah, he will have no success with his money. He's obviously talking about selling a Torah for not one of the reasons it's permissible to sell a Torah for, aka for a wedding to learn Torah. That's the idea over here. That's what we have to realize over here. What exactly a Torah means. Let's open up to learn a little halacha l'maisa based on what we just learned. Very practical halacha comes from this. Open up, look at Siman Kuf Mem Tes. It says over there, at the end of the Siman, talks about escorting a sefer Torah. It says over there, "B'makoimo shematzniyan oisel beheichel shud Aron bris Hashem mitzvah l'chol mi shoyeveres lefanav ulavoiso ad lefnei Aron shemachnisan oiser sham." That when a sefer Torah is on the go, when it's being hidden, when it's being placed in the Aron Kodesh in Shul, there's a mitzvah for anyone. The Chol Mishoy Verisafan of anyone who the Sefer Torah goes in front of, there's a mitzvah for that individual to escort the Sefer Torah until in front of the Aron. So we see from over here that what? We see this chosh of a mitzvah that we learn out from this pasuk, perhaps at least according to the understanding of the Kli Yakar. to escort the sefer Torah until the Aron. Then the Rama continues and writes, this is from a Maharil, by the way, that Rama. V'chein hagoylel yelech achar sefer Torah ad lifnei ha'aron. Similarly, the person who's performing Galila should walk by the sefer Torah before the Aron. And he should stand over there until the sefer Torah will be returned to its place. So you see something very interesting. The Rama is only talking about the person who's doing Galila, not Hagba, though, which is something very interesting and to keep in mind. Seemingly it would be the same. Oh, but then the Rama writes, same applies to someone who's doing Hagba. And some say that the custom is to bring the children as well, that the children should come to kiss the Torah in order to educate them and to warn them that they should be careful with mitzvahs. So in other words, we see from over here that the Rama is acknowledging the fact and that it's a mitzvah to escort the sefer Torah, whoever the Torah goes in front of. And then the Rama points out and specifies that there's a special mitzvah for someone who gets Hagba and Galilo to escort the sefer Torah back to the Aron Kodesh. And then the Rama says there's a custom to kiss the Torah and have children kiss it. Now, the Rama doesn't talk about the person who's opening the Aron Kodesh and closing it, psicha, but that would be a higher obligation as well. Let's just stop for a moment and analyze something. We see from over here something very special, which is what? Which is that there's a distinction, there's a difference between, we see from over here that there's a special mitzvah, which is that what? Which is that there's a mitzvah to escort the sefer Torah, and it's a higher level. There's more of a reason for someone who got Hagba Galila. You could add in also psich over here. That's what we see from this. So comes along the get a little bit of a deep dive. I think that the Mishnah Brew is actually very short on this. What he comments on this point, he says like this. B'chein, this is the Mishnah Brewer down here. B'chein kishemoitzia ma'heichal mitzvah l'kol misho ve'eres l'fanav l'avoiso arabima. When you take the sefer Torah out from the Aron, there's a mitzvah for anyone who the sefer Torah passes in front of to escort it until the bima. The Mishnah Brewer then quotes that, and paskins like the Levush, the Shulchan Eitzi Shit, and the Shari Ephraim who say that someone who gets Hagba and Galila does not need to escort the sefer Torah until the Aron Kodesh. And then he says that there's a minog that when you escort it, the Chazan should say Mizmor LeDavid, and he goes into to that over there, what you're supposed to say. All right, but that's the Mishnah Brew over there. So let's do a little bit of a deeper dive on this over here. The Oz V'Hada Mishnah Brew.
So who's changing it from the Golel and the Magbia to everybody? The Rama is the one who changes that?
No, the Rama says, the Rama specifies the person doing Hagba and Galila should escort it all the way, and the Mishnah Brewer tweaks that and says that no, they don't need to. They don't need to. Halach l'maisa.
But everybody should, and nobody said halach l'maisa. Nobody said everybody should.
Nobody said what? Say
nobody said like it's a mitzvah too. Nobody said that anybody from the Kehillah should do it.
No, they brought
Besides
that down.
the Kli Yakar.
No, not just the Kli Yakar. It comes up in halacha. The Mishnah Brewer said in Zion that when you take the sefer Torah from the Aron, mitzvah l'kol misho ve'eres l'fanav, whoever the sefer Torah is passing in front of, he should escort it until the bima.
So that's anybody who it's passing in front of. But let's say you're in the in the bleachers, you're all the way on the side.
Okay, good. Okay, good. So that's what we're gonna get to now. Excellent.
Okay.
Excellent. Thanks for bringing that up. First, let's just start with what the Oz V'Hadar Mishnah Berurah quotes over here. They quote the Yabates, Rav Yaakov Emden, that some say that you should just escort a little, not to the Aron Kodesh. And then they quote there's a massive Caf Hachaim over here that's incredibly important over here, even for Ashkenazim. It's a very important Caf Hachaim benogay to this. And he writes like this. I'm actually going to quote him next. He quotes this custom over here, the sefer Torah. And then he says, the minog of Gedolim is that they kiss the Torah when it passes in front of them and they escort it a little bit. But they don't escort it until the Aron Kodesh. Perhaps the reason is in most shuls, Yavo Lidchoy says that people are going to start pushing each other. If everyone in the shul is going to go to the sefer Torah, it's going to get very crowded. And everyone's going to be pushing each other and it's not going to be good. So therefore, he says only certain people should escort the sefer Torah, aka the person getting Hagbar Galila, at least according to what he quotes over here. And then he says that someone else also says that you don't need to bring it all the way. Then he goes into Minhag Svardim and he says a person needs to be very careful with honoring the Torah. B'kol ma de'efshar. Yesh la'adam lizar harbe b'kavod Torah. B'kol ma de'efshar. A person needs to be very careful with honoring the Torah or Talmidi Chachamim in general. Ki hi eitz chayim, because it's the tree of life. Moshe Kosav eitz chayim hilama chazikim bo v'hi anoisenes lanu orich yamim v'shnois chayim, and it will lead to longevity as well. So we see that what? We see this concept of the honoring the Torah and escorting it. And we see also this Caf Hachaim, the Oz V'Hadar Mishnah Berurah, after they quote this Caf Hachaim, say that it's implied from this Caf Hachaim that if there's a small amount of people in Shul, a Sibor Mu'atim, so then everyone should escort the Sefer Torah. The only reason not to escort it is because if you're in a shul, for example, that has 100+ people, you can't all escort the Sefer Torah. There's no room and everyone's going to push each other. So we see that there could be a halachic distinction as to how many people are there. Questions?
No question. I heard a funny mice about this.
All right, let me finish this and then you can add the mice.
Right.
Comes along the Shari Ephraim and says that anyone who comes close to the Sefer is accustomed to kiss it. He doesn't just mention children. And then the Shari Ephraim says that l'chachila, preferably you should kiss it with your mouth. And if you can't, then do it with your hand. And then he says some have the custom to kiss it with their hand and you don't make fun of that. Now, we have to quote a few more things over here before things get out of hand completely. COVID-19 germs. They knew about germs way before COVID-19. What's the source? In the Dershu over here. The Dershu quotes this Shari Ephraim, you kiss it with your right hand. Particular, maybe Torah Chaim says 2 hands. The Chazon Ish would do that. Kiss it with the type of jacket, talus. Someone who can't kiss it with his mouth, Shari Ephraim says you do it with your hands. The Kitzer Shlah, even though he made fun of this, you could still do it. It just shows that you want to attach yourself to holiness. However, the Sefer Vayas Avram writes the custom is only to kiss the Sefer Torah with the hand, but not your mouth. Because the Rambam writes in Hilchos Roseach V'Shmiras HaNefesh, Perik Yud Beis Halacha Daled Osir Liyitain. It's also for a person to put his mouth on money or on coins, because maybe there was saliva or there were germs on the coin, and now it's gonna be going into his mouth. Also, Rabbi Henkin in his Eidus L'Yisrael on page 123 says you shouldn't do this for additional reasons as well as Israel V'Liyoshev. In the Shilos and Chuvas Yisa Yosef Chelek Aleph Siman Lamed Beis. Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach is quoted in the Halicha Shlomo on Tefillah Perik Yud Beis in the Orchos Halacha footnote 68, who said, you don't need to worry about danger when it comes to Sefer Torah. But you see that there are certainly rabbis that were concerned about this. That's what you see from this. And then this is perhaps my most favorite part about this whole topic, which is why It's very important to listen to this. What was the lashon of the Rama? The language of the Rama was mitzvah lakol misha oiveres lafonov lilavoiso ad lifnei ha'aron shemachnisin oiso sham. There's a mitzvah for anyone who the sefer Torah passes in front of to escort it until the Aron Kodesh comes along the Piskei Chuvas. It's an obvious diuk. The chiyuv, the obligation to escort the sefer Torah is only if the Torah is going in front of you. It's within close proximity, close range to you. However, other people in the shul, who I like to say are sitting in the bleachers, that's a different discussion. They're not going to be obligated to escort the sefer Torah. Rather, they could stand where they are. They could look at it. And then he says, and here's the main point, on the contrary, if there's a lot of people there and now you're going to be pushing each other and it's going to be crowded, sheva al tasei odif. Better not to go and escort the sefer Torah and to kiss it. Because that's not kavod Torah when people are pushing each other. That's not an honor to the Torah. So therefore, a person has to properly assess and evaluate the situation that he's in. Where I sit, usually in the shuls where I daven, usually always in the front or right by with the path of the sefer Torah. So for me, it's a no-brainer. But even so, if there's going to be a crowd there and a lot of people, I just stay put. I don't kiss it. The source of this is the Siddur Yabetz. It's also implied from the Prima Godim, the Eshel Avram Sivkot and Gimel. It was a long Eshel Avram. I tried looking it up. I skimmed it very fast. I didn't find it. But I could look again. And then this point of just looking at it, if it's going to be crowded, you should say it could be based on a Siddur Shla also, and it's not correct because of the pushing that it seems like is brought in the Makor Chaim by the Chovos Yair as well as the Caf Hachaim.
To because there's so much